Hello. Before watching this video, make sure you choose the highest quality setting that your computer will allow you to have.
Hello students. So today we're going to learn how to tackle a different type of passage that you're going to see on the science portion of your ACT. I call these text passages as opposed to the data passages that you've been working with until now. So if we look at this passage right here, okay, it is all text. There is no data, okay? You see one picture up here on the top, and that is it. So we can't use the same strategies for this type of passage. Sometimes you'll see just a pure text passage like this. Sometimes you'll see a mixture of text with data. And my advice to students when you see something like this with all this reading that you have to do, and remember, it's the last portion of the ACT, you're tired, you have 40 questions to do in 35 minutes, and you just finished the reading passage, which is a lot of reading. My advice, and this is tip number 9, skip the text passage. Do it last. Okay, so do all the data passages first because you can answer those questions quickly, and then at the end, once you've answered everything else, come back and read through this, because if you run out of time, at least you've maximized the amount of questions that you've answered. So that's that. Okay, so I'm going to zoom into each of the different paragraphs here. So let's take a minute to read first the first paragraph. Now, let's read the protein hypothesis portion. Now, let's read the DNA hypothesis portion. Okay, hopefully you read through the passage. And now, we are going to start answering these questions, okay? But before we do, here is tip number 10. Mark the answer as you read, or the passage as you read through it, okay? As you read through it, anything that seems important, make underline or something, or make a little note on the side, because you may have to refer to that as you read the questions. Okay, so that's what I've done right here. Okay, so question 34. Which of the following statements is most consistent with the DNA hypothesis? The amount of DNA will generally increase from cell to cell type as the number of, and then 4 options completing the sentence like we've talked about before. So I've scanned them and I underlined the differences. So basically I'm looking at amino acids and where they are, or chromosomes and where they are. Now based on the DNA hypothesis, so I got to make sure I'm looking at the right thing, okay, DNA will increase if the number of something increases. So as we look at the DNA hypothesis, it says that the amount of DNA in a cell is correlated with the number of chromosomes in the cell. So if I go back over here, so it's going to be chromosomes. And where are the chromosomes? Right here in the picture, it tells me that they are in the nucleus. So the answer is H. All right. I'm going to give you a minute now to read question 35. Okay, hopefully you read question 35. But basically, we're trying to see here what kind of data supports the DNA hypothesis. What else is found in the nucleus? Okay, so we've got amino acids, proteins, gametes, and chromosomes. These are all vocab words, okay? But they are all vocab words that are defined for you in the text. And hopefully you underlined or at least noticed them as you read through the text, okay? Chromosomes are over here. It says that they're always in the nucleus. So that matches, right? So maybe the answer is chromosomes. Amino acids are right here. Proteins are made of amino acids. So I have the definition for A and B. So amino acids are the building blocks of proteins. That doesn't really have anything to do with being in the nucleus. And in the passage, it did say that proteins are found everywhere in the cell. And then gametes. What are gametes? Okay, it says over here gametes, the reproductive cells. Well, the reproductive cell can't be inside the nucleus of a cell. That won't make sense. So the correct answer is D for chromosomes. Question 36. According to the passage, a similarity between DNA and proteins is that both molecules are found only in gametes. So DNA and proteins are only found in reproductive cells. The text didn't say that at all. They're abundant in the cytoplasm. Remember, chromosomes and DNA are only found in the nucleus. Okay, we just talked about how the chromosomes are only in the nucleus. Contain 20 different amino acids. Where did I see anything about 20 different amino acids? And I looked through right there. Cells contain 20 different amino acids that can be arranged in virtually infinite number of ways to make different proteins. So amino acids make proteins. That's not the same thing as DNA. And then both DNA and proteins are composed of smaller subunits. That is correct. So proteins are made of amino acids, DNA are made of nucleotides. Okay? Alrighty, let's keep going. Question 37. According to the protein hypothesis, which of the following observation provides the strongest evidence that genes are not composed of DNA? Now, you know that genes are composed of DNA, but we're talking about evidence that would support the protein hypothesis, okay? So, and if you look here at the protein hypothesis, what it says is that DNA only has 4 nucleotides, only has 4 building blocks. So how could something with just 4 building blocks create such genetic diversity that we see in life? Maybe proteins, because they have 20 building blocks, are more likely to be carrying the genes. Okay, so the answer for 37 is A. Let's look at number 38. Again, this is something we're just referring to the text and answering the questions. Okay. Question 38. Take a moment to read the question. All right, now let's go over it. The thing that I noticed that's different here, it's saying DNA hypothesis, genes are made of DNA because DNA is either outside or inside the nucleus, or protein hypothesis. Genes are made of protein because proteins are inside or outside the nucleus, okay? But the presence of DNA in the mitochondria, okay, would be evidence that contradicts the DNA hypothesis because DNA is outside the nucleus. Remember, what this scientist is saying here, the DNA is just in the nucleus with the chromosomes, always matches the chromosomes, and it matches the gametes too. Okay, so letter F here would contradict what this scientist here is saying. Again, this is just reading comprehension questions. All right, the last 2 questions. The scientist who describes the DNA hypothesis implies that the protein hypothesis is weakened by which of the following observations? Okay, so here the DNA hypothesis scientist is trying to say, you know, the protein hypothesis is weak because of this evidence. And the evidence that he mentioned is that the amount of protein changes between all the cells. So how can it hold the genetic information if even within the same body, the same organism, every cell has a different amount of protein? Okay, it would have to be consistent between the cells. That genetic information is very important. And then the last question, question 40. Which of the following illustrations of a portion of DNA molecule is consistent with the description in the passage? So we have some here with a mixture of amino acid and nucleotides. We have one with just amino acids and one with just nucleotides. Okay, so we are looking for DNA molecules. They are made of what? And again, over here it says DNA consists of chains of subunits called nucleotides. So if we go back down there, the only possible answer is J. So that is it. We are done covering all the different strategies to tackle the ACT science portion. Remember the 10 tips. We have some text passages for you to practice with, as well as a passage that is a mixture of text and data. Okay, usually on the ACT, you'll see either a question like this one that's all text. Sometimes you'll see one that's all text and another one that's text and data. Sometimes you'll see two that are a mixture of text and data. You just have to be ready for what you're presented with. Awesome. Thank you guys for your hard work, and move on to those practice problems.